On this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we are going to dig into the vault and show you some really cool retro hardware. What's going on, everybody? Marco Chiappetta for Hot Hardware here. I'm with Chris Getting, my partner up in Maine. Dave is out of town and getting some much-needed vacation time in. So it's just going to be us two today. We're going to use a slightly different format. We have posted tons of new stuff on the site, so obviously go check out hothardware.com for all the latest news. I posted up our full Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra 5G review yesterday, so all the benchmarks, battery life data, image samples, video samples, that's all up on the site right now. But we thought we'd mix things up today and show you some really cool stuff that I dug out of the stash. This is a fraction of some of the stuff that I have put away. I know, Chris, you have some stuff too, right? How's things going up in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I've got some things I've pulled that aren't quite mine. I found them at the police department I work at, but they've been out of commission a fair decade or three, so I think they're fine to show off for what we're doing here. So we'll get to them a bit later, but if you want to kick things off for us.
Yeah, sure. So, what do you think? Kick things off with let's do a AMD processor platform. Sound good?
Should we march our way back in time?
So, yeah, this is actually not the oldest. Let me start with the oldest then. So,
all right,
I'm going to pull out a graphics card first. It's not going to look too out of the ordinary. Some of you have probably seen this guy before. This is a Radeon X850, I believe from late 2004, 2005 era. Nothing looks too crazy on this particular card. There you have, S-Video, VGA, DVI output. We had those 6-pin PCI Express connectors already. But I'm going to grab another one of these to show you something a little different. Now, this one's going to look similar.
I would say that looks off. Oh,
but what's that port right there?
Okay, so is that one of those connectors that we've seen that splits out and you can get multiple displays off of?
No, this is. So someone's saying can't hear us, but they're watching.
I think that's Dave. He's at dinner, so he probably doesn't have sound on.
Oh, okay, because I hope everything's working. So this is actually the very first card that supported Crossfire to come out of ATI. This is before they were part of AMD. So this is really funky. Now, everyone knows that today, if you do Crossfire, AMD communicates over the PCI Express bus, NVIDIA has SLI with their NVLink, and it has an internal bridge connector. This, right, so I believe the way things played out back then, NVIDIA surprised ATI with SLI with their cards, even though, they bought 3DFX and 3DFX had the tech. So there was no, sort of provisions on the PCBs to sync the two cards together. So what this does, this was basically taking a splitting of a DVI output. So there was a big long cable that hung off of this card.
Nice.
And you linked it to the first card, and it basically composited the images from both cards over a single DVI connector. So, the early Crossfire still, kind of worked just like it does today. You had a split screen mode. They called it scissor back then. You had a tiled mode and alternate frame rendering. But this was ATI's first answer to SLI. Like, these cards are super rare. Nobody has these because nobody bought them. Like, SLI was much more refined. This was a clunky solution. I'm sure AMD ATI sold a few, but not quite too many. But I'm a hoarder, so I didn't part with the very first Crossfire cards that I got to test.
A nice little collection there.
Yeah, these are cool. I mean, I should probably plug them in one day and see if they still work. They've been sitting in a box.
So that'd be the original PCI, right? Because that's before AGP.
No, this PCI Express.
It is PCI Express. Okay.
After AGP, but PCI Express. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, I think I can beat you on age, actually, probably with all my systems. But yeah, the first one I've got here, I know I've shown this one on the cast before. This is the Zenith Data Systems. It's got a complicated model number, the ZFL 18193. And this doesn't have much of anything for specs, but it does have dual floppy drives, which is
That is awesome.
Uh, yeah, so no internal storage that I'm aware of. It does power up last I checked, but I wasn't able to get it to do anything because I don't have any floppies to boot it with. If someone does happen to have something that, they want to send my way to get this going, or point me to a download that'll work that I can format on my own floppy, because I do have a floppy to USB adapter. I'd love to get it up and playing with it, but I so far haven't been able to find any great information on how to really get it going. But it's beautiful. It's very portable, as you can see, very lightweight and thin. I think this is where Dell was getting the inspiration with their XPS systems, maybe LG Gram, something like that. So yeah, very, very fun find. I can only imagine what this would have been used for in the police department back in, I forget the date. I think this was early 90s, something like 92, something like that. I could be wrong. But yeah, quite a system. It's got its...
Was it x86? Did I miss that? Do you know what processor's in there?
I would have to look it up again. I was trying to get through all my information. I have more specs on the other machines I have here, but I didn't quite get down into this one in the pile before we started. But I can look it up if you want to turn to your next item, and then I can try and pull some more information on it.
I will. So I'll grab something that I know nobody's ever seen before because it's a prototype. I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Renovatio is saying, but can it play Tetris? If that's a DOS machine, it probably can play at least some version of Tetris.
And if I recall, it can run DOS. So,
all right, if it's DOS, then it's probably x86. So I'm going to pull out another graphics card. There's no way anybody's seen these before because this was never a retail product. Look at this guy. So,
oh wow. I love the copper heat sinks, by the way. They're really nice looking.
This is kind of funky. Let's see if I can get it to focus. You'll see there is an AMD logo and the ATI logo still on there. So this is actually a test board for the M92 GPU. I believe that was Radeon HD 4570. This is a test board for the first 4570 Radeon Mobility 4570. So before they made their way into laptops, this is how AMD/ATI was testing them. I also believe this is from 2005. So it's really funky. S-video output, VGA output, DisplayPort, DVI, HDMI, another DisplayPort, a bunch of test pins and test ports on it. But if you were to plug this guy into a system, it just behaved like a graphics card. So this is like, it's not an MXM card,
right?
But a test vehicle before these guys were adopted by any of the notebook ODMs for mobile systems. Kind of a rare card. I have two of these. I think the other one's slightly lower end. I forget which one it is. I couldn't dig it up out of the box. This one I had handy, but I know nobody has seen that. This thing is super rare. There was probably a handful that went out when the time came, years ago. I couldn't even find the article on the site. I don't remember what it was called.
I love prototype gear because it's just make the board what it needs to be and we'll refine it later as long as it works. And
exactly.
That was actually pretty polished for a prototype. But yeah, so I pulled up a data page on the Zenith ZFL 18193, and it's actually 1987 it was manufactured. So we're looking at a ADC88 at 8 megahertz, 640K of RAM, and a 25-pin serial CGA video, 25-pin printer, external video. So, pretty capable for the time, and I think I'll be snagging one of these manuals later to see what I can do with it. But yeah, very nice find.
So no hard drive, just the dual floppies, because you should be able to just format a bootable, DOS 3.2 probably or 2.1 floppy and go to town on that thing. Yeah, was it 3.5 inch or 5 1/4 on there?
That's 3.5.
3.5.
So. Yep. So it shouldn't be too bad. If I remember right from poking at it before, there was maybe something weird with the formatting. Hold on, I got the latch. One side is sticky and the other one's very loose, so it relocked itself. But yeah, just a regular...
Gotcha. So you probably could just boot, but like if you had to change anything, there's usually like setup disks for those old systems where you could tweak, I guess the early BIOS settings, but if you can't access it directly, there's probably a setup disk out there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure. So I'll keep my eyes on this page. But if you want, do you want to go to your next item, or should it come back to me?
Why don't you show what you have? Because I have a big boy coming up next.
Okay. So yeah, all my systems today are laptops. So the next one I have is a more recognizable name today than the Zenith, which is a Toshiba satellite, and this is the T1850C. And so when I looked this up, it had a little marketing line thing saying the Toshiba T1850C and T18S0 are among the lightest and most advanced portable laptops available. Utilizing advanced technology and high-speed components, the T1800 family offers excellent display legibility, battery operation, and IBM PCAT compatibility. So I really like that line about display legibility. Here we're focused on color accuracy, resolution, refresh rates. There's like, no, you can make out the text. It's good.
Yeah, you can actually read this screen.
Yeah, so this one steps up the processor a bit. So this has an 8386 SX-25, so 32-bit, running at either 12.5 or 25 megahertz, and 4 megs of RAM. So we're coming up a little bit, and if I look back at the year, I actually don't have the year in front of me, but I think this one may have been the one that was 93. So it's got some age on it, but unlike the Zenith system, which was 87, I am actually older than this Toshiba, so I can say that. But yeah, it's still probably technically before my time.
Yeah, unfortunately not before my time. So a quick funny story before I get to the next thing that I want to show. I used to, do tech support as a little side gig years ago, and I was helping somebody that was a member at a yacht club that I used to help. And he ended up passing away a few years ago, but I got an email from his daughter saying she had a bunch of laptops that she wanted to get rid of. She knew I helped her dad. Can I help her wipe the drives so that they can get rid of the machines? And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. My pleasure. Don't sweat it. And I was down in that area. I picked them up, and I'm thinking, they're not going to be that old, these laptops. So she hands me a couple of cases of laptops, dude, and they're still in my trunk because I'm so freaking lazy and I haven't smashed the drives in them yet. 'Cause I have to pull them all apart. They're all like Windows 95 and ME era laptops, including some Toshiba, some Dell, some HPs. They are so freaking old. I'm surprised that they had them. They must have been in an attic, and she just came across them and wanted some help getting rid of them. It's so funny.
I love it. Yeah. Oh, you want to go?
See something? Okay, here's something wild. I gotta lay some backstory, right? So right now, AMD is really on a high. They are, battling very well with Intel.
Of course.
Years ago, it wasn't always the case. So if we go way back to like Pentium 3 days, right? Intel was on top. Then the Athlons, the first Athlons came, and AMD was on top. That lit a fire under, Intel's butt, and they came back with Conroe in 2006, and that kind of put AMD back on their heels. So we were sort of in the dual core era or dual processor area, two cores. But Intel with Conroe had Core 2 duos and Core 2 quads. So, the first quad cores were starting to come out. They're not the first. We had, Pentium Ds and shit too. Oh, and stuff too. Sorry. But AMD decided to come out with something really high end to battle those first quad cores. And let me pick this guy out. A lot of people, I don't even think have heard of this platform because it was very short-lived. It went by a couple of names. So this is the AMD Quad FX. Can I get this into position for you guys to see? I can't see my camera well.
It looks good
Chris,
to me.
Does that look all right?
In focus and in frame.
All right. So this is dual AMD FX 72 dual core processor. So quad cores on the motherboard. On an Asus workstation board, it was the L1N64 SLI. So AMD either called this 4x4 or Quad FX or the Quad Father. back in 2006, so like 15 years ago now, almost 14, 15 years ago. And so, oh wait, was it called Fascinate? That could have been even another name for this thing. So this was top of the line, super rare. AMD was selling the processors in 2-packs. So like a pair of FX, I think it was FX 72s. Let me go double check this. I want to say it was like $1,000 for 2 of the processors. So a pair of FX 70s was
Awesome.
$599. A pair of FX 72s was $799, and a pair of FX 74s was $999. So this must be FX 74s. I didn't power it up. I found it in the stash and pulled it out. But as big and beefy and as hardcore as this was, it didn't actually hang with the Core 2 quads. Intel with Conroe was just so far out in front that they, crushed what AMD had at the time. And it was up until from that point on until Ryzen a few years ago, that's when Intel was on top.
Well, you also got to consider at the time, just adding more cores wasn't necessarily going to solve your problem because so many programs just didn't know what to do with multiple threads. It took a few generations of these multi-core chips before we really got to see the parallelization and gains with them anyway.
With games, yeah. So that was, that's an interesting conversation because lots of people think, you need software that's going to take advantage of those processors. Yes, if you're running one app at a time, but even, way back then, every process on the system is a thread. And Windows was capable of handling quad cores. And what you found is maybe a single benchmark didn't show a lot of advantages over a single core processor of similar clocks. But when you had multitasking going on and multiple things running, the system was more responsive, fewer hiccups if something jumped in the background, stuff like that. So as powerful as it is, this would be funny to build up now and install Windows 10 if it'll work and see how it behaves. Because I bet you with a SATA SSD attached, this thing would still feel pretty good, even today.
Yeah, it doesn't really take much processor power to get a nice feeling system. I mean, you can pretty much throw in any little CPU you want as long as your storage is fast, your memory is competent. I mean, I think for most general desktop level usage, I think it should be fine.
I don't remember specifically. I think this required, registered DIMMs because it's basically they're branded FX74s, but it's basically 2 Opterons on here. So this is like Intel server platform from that time, crammed onto a prosumer motherboard. And I think I took some heat at the time. If I remember correctly, I said something in the article like, a single motherboard does not a platform make. So at the time, this was being pitched as, a new platform. We're going to have many more dual socket configurations, blah, blah, blah. And it never happened. This was, the first and last of its kind. Very, very short-lived. This one, it is still mint in the box. So I'm hoping it still works. I even have all the fans and the I/O plate. I have everything. I could build a perfect system with this guy. It's freaking awesome.
We'll see. So yeah, we've got your review pulled up here, so we can look at the specs right here. So pushing, which one do you think this was? The 74? So 3,000 megahertz.
That yeah, I should have been a pair of 74s.
Okay. Yeah, so 3 gigs across and 125 watts for that. That's pretty spicy processor.
You know what? Now that I'm remembering, holy crap, it's coming back to me. I only had the one set of processors, but because they were multiplier unlocked, that's how we were able to test the lower speed grades. So I basically just changed the multipliers, ran another set of numbers, changed the multiplier, ran another set of numbers. And it's funny, man, lots of these benchmarks. So what version of Cinebench was in here? Do we have Cinebench 9.5?
There you go.
9.5. That's awesome. So looking at the numbers, I mean, they don't mean anything to me today because I've blocked out what they meant. But, Core 2 Extreme QX 6700, the top of the line processor from Intel at the time, actually trailed in Cinebench looking at this. But overall, I think like in gaming, if I don't know if you're on that same page, 3D Mark 06, holy crap, 3D Mark 06. I'm getting old. the Core 2 Extreme was just way out in front,
Right.
just much faster
No,
overall.
I was gonna cut over and look at the Quake 4 numbers.
Oh my gosh. This is
Yeah,
bringing back
that's
memories, man.
that's getting crushed. What's interesting is so the FX62. How was that supposed to compare if it's outperforming the
So this
74?
this goes back to your point, right? The extra cores, and because there was contention across the hypertransport for the two processors, really, and I believe the memory was even slower because it was registered DIMMs. It didn't quite match the flagship enthusiast desktop processor for games. So it just
Yeah.
across the board, it wasn't going to be better. But if you were doing stuff that was going to leverage the processors, then yeah, you have more CPU core resources, then it's going to be faster.
Yeah, I will say this graph is hurting a bit. The power consumption in watts. So we're looking at least double the power consumption of even the FX62s or the Core 2 Extremes, Core 2 Duo.
Yeah,
That
so like
was
AMD was really pushing it with it. So, but you'll see, like that's more power than really just adding the second processor would be. So I think this particular platform, what? I wonder if there's still like BIOS files available. The total platform as a whole just required a ton more power just to keep it up and running, like literally double. It would have cost you double back then just to keep this system going. Pretty nuts, crazy stuff going on here.
right. So I'm looking through here trying to find your little controversial quote, but I
I
don't think
don't
I'm quite
remember. I
seeing it.
might have said it, like there was no Twitter and stuff then, so I don't remember where I said it.
MySpace. Uh,
No, I wasn't on MySpace.
oh, there's a dig link at the bottom. Maybe it was good old dig.
Oh my gosh. Remember Dig? Holy cow. That's so funny.
It 404s.
Oh well. You know what? I gotta see something. This motherboard was L1N 64 SLI. Think it's still, oh my gosh, it's still up on ASUS's site. Let's see if the link works.
You can shoot that over to me.
It's still up. Oh my gosh, this is still up. I don't see the date. Should I put it in the chat or through Skype? Where should I send it to you?
Whichever. You can put it in chat.
Yeah, let me throw it in the chat. This is so funny. And you'll notice one BIOS file up there.
Get it while you can.
Holy cow, that's wild. That is nuts. I wish there were more geeks in the friggin' chat to talk about this stuff, man.
Right.
That's a wild piece of hardware right there.
Where'd Tuan
Where's all
go?
my retro nerds?
Should I see your link somewhere?
Oh, I threw it in the chat on the live stream, so it's up on
It's
YouTube.
not updating for me for some reason. Oh well. Yeah. So I guess if we want to cut back to me, I've got one more system, which is a brand people have probably heard of, but probably not for laptops. They probably have flashbacks to their high school math classes because this is a Texas Instruments Extensa 650 CD, which is, let me bring it up, from the year of 1996. So again, this is as new as my little collection gets. But we've stepped up from the Toshiba satellites 8386 SX25 at up to 25 megahertz, and now we're pushing 133 megahertz with the Pentium built into this, 16 megabytes of memory. So, a whole 3 orders less than what we're looking at for a standard system now to consider it passable. And a 1.3 gigabyte hard drive. So plenty of storage for all your thumbnail little images and stuff. And a DSTN display, which I'm not familiar with what exactly that is versus a TFT. It was also available in, but this is the DSTN variant. And then 2 megs of dedicated video memory. So you could probably do some pretty sick gaming on this.
Yes, some pretty wild Day of the Tentacle gaming on that bad boy.
Right. So, yeah, I'm not sure where exactly the police department picked this up, but I'm sure it was in use at some point.
You think that was in an office or in a car at some point, in a patrol car, or like
I
it's just sitting on a desk?
So this, I think, would have been at a desk, because I mean, in the cars, if you try to put something like that in there, you get the sun in, it's just going to kill it in no time flat, because they don't really leave the car. Some departments do, ours doesn't. So need the rugged. So we've got Nathan Blackhawk in the chat who says, is that digital signal TN panel? It could be. I didn't get a chance to look it up before this. So if someone does have the answer to that, I would be curious. But the higher level version, the 635 or 655, I think, has a TFT panel. So I assume that to be the more premium option that we're now familiar with today.
So I just quickly Googled it. It stood for dual scan. So dual scan super twist pneumatic. I can't read the whole thing. I didn't click through to Wikipedia. LCD tech in which the screen was divided into two sections, which are simultaneously rendered. So I wonder why they would do that. I should probably read that one day. That's interesting. I don't remember hearing about that back in the day.
I wonder if
it says DSTN display quality is poor compared to TFT with visible noise smearing, much lower contrast, and slow response. So sounds great.
Ouch. So yeah, awesome. I'll have to see if I can get it powered up. I'm not sure if I have a power cable for it or not in the bag. I've got to look. I kind of smashed and grabbed on my way home. But yeah, it'd be interesting to get that up and running and see just how lovely that display is.
Oh my gosh, some of those old, when I first started writing, I wasn't quite full time. No, I take that back. I think when I first went full time on HotHardware, I was using an old compact AMD K6. No, this wasn't when I first. Yeah, no, when I first went full time, AMD K62 powered compact laptop. Oh my God, the screen was so bad. If you weren't looking directly straight at it, it might as well have just been gray and white. You couldn't make out. And it was just so horrible. And when I look at the stuff we have now, it's nuts how far that we've come.
I only have 179 degrees of viewing angle. I mean, it's kind of an inferior display. I don't know what to do with it.
You know, it's funny. So I had been using a 27-inch 4K, 120 hertz, one of those really high-end G-Sync panels for a while, as my main display. Mm-hmm. But 27-inch too small. Reason I gave it a shot was because I was on these are old now, so a 32-inch Sharp PNK321. These were the IGZO panels that required MST.
Oh yeah.
So it's like essentially two DisplayPort connections. But I switched back to this 32. And I realized this is a full 10-bit panel, man. It looks so good. So nice. I remember you and I were chatting that you want a 10-bit panel. Now that I'm, actually experiencing it and set it up properly, pretty hardcore, man.
So you've got it dialed in the control panel to actually be 10-bit signal?
It says that it is. Yeah.
It says that.
It's just, the blacks look really nice. So I'm surprised at the difference once it was actually dialed in and set up, because before I was just, I never actually dug through the menus.
Right. Yeah. What color gamut do you have it set to? Do you have it in
sRGB right now, I think.
sRGB. Okay. So.
Yeah. So let's see what we got going on in the chat. So we got, Tuan. I know Tuan's been on a retro tear lately. Tuan writes for us occasionally when he's not feeling lazy, right, Tuan? So he dropped a comment, "This stuff is too new. Don't make me break out my iOmega Bernoulli box too." Just saw you post about that. You should come on soon and show some of that stuff. And he also, he's going to break out his compact portable 3 with the amber glass plasma displays. Do
you mind if I show your Facebook page some of the stuff you've posted to on? I don't want to flash it up on there without your consent.
Yeah, on chat. Oh, he says go for it. Yeah, do it up. And we got James Pryor from AMD here, or formerly from AMD, now at Sci-Fi. Showing, he's working on some really cool RISC-V based processors now.
Here's his compact portable 3.
Oh wow, that's it right there, huh?
Yep, and he said he had 3.1 on it. So
look at that lovely amber going.
it's gorgeous. And of course the was that the GTX 1080 I think they made with that USB drive.
That was for the Pascal launch, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I gave mine to a reader.
Yeah, we'll find some more posts further down. Obviously, a lot of car posts as well.
Yeah, that's two on little trucks, cars, and retro computing.
What more do you need in life?
That's it. That's all you really need. So should I pull out the last big boy? This one's a little newer. This one most people have probably heard of, but definitely still hardcore. And it's been I'm such a mess. It's actually been sitting out on the top shelf in my office since I reviewed it. This thing behind me right here, you can't read it because of the beautiful blur on my camera. These are some quotes from the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times, where Intel quoted HotHardware's article for our review of this. We actually ended up giving one away back then because we were trying to capitalize on the extra publicity from those quotes. So let me see if I can lift this up with
Shameless
one arm.
plugs.
I don't think I can. Hold on a second. This is sort of Intel's version of Quad FX. Not quite, because these things were really badass. So this is Skull Trail right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
This bad boy is two quad core. What model were these processors? QX 6700? QX? Hold on, I have to go look it up because I'm forgetting the model of the processors, and I don't want to get it wrong. What were these? QX 9775s. So two quad core 2 quads. They were branded Core 2 Extremes, right? So 8 cores on a giant eATX motherboard. Now, the memory here, not regular memory either. It's DDR2 FB DIMMs. This platform required fully buffered DIMMs to work. I believe this was also, I may get this detail wrong, one of the first platforms to support both Crossfire and SLI. And back then, there was a lot more politics and drama. To get SLI on the board, Intel incorporated an NVIDIA PCI Express switch. So I think the model was NV200 or NV100 PCI Express switch alongside the chipset underneath this monster heatsink. So this was an extremely high performance platform for the time. Very expensive. I believe, like, it's so funny, like the last few months, a bunch of the YouTubers have done articles on this platform. And I was like, oh yeah, I still have mine right next to me here. So this was like super, super duper powerful. It went by a couple of the names, like at CES, I think they were calling it V8. Skull Trail was like the official name. This might have been the first platform that had the Intel enthusiast skull branding on it. So that kind of pervaded all the way, actually still in Intel's lineup. Like if you look at our review of the NUC 9 Extreme, that skull is still being used, for some of the Intel, enthusiast products. We got a bunch of stuff. Let's see, oh yeah. Tuon is saying, yeah, fully buffered DIMMs. James Pryor, not as bad as RD rims. Who was that company, James? Oh my God, they still pop up from time to time. They get sued by everybody, or they were suing everybody back in the day. I'm getting so old, I don't remember the names of some of these companies.
Yeah,
Rambus.
That was Rambus.
Yeah, man. So I still have some of that stuff stashed away. Like right now, all I did was I moved into this house after getting married. So the stuff in the attic is only 15, 16 years old. If I go back to the old casa, where my parents are, the stash at that house has some really old stuff, like Pentium days, Pentium 2 days, also like pre HotHardware days for me, from before I was doing HotHardware stuff, because I've been a geek, freaking forever. But yeah, so
you're
this
saying
platform was nuts.
It's time for a field trip.
I'm sorry, dude, you cut out. I couldn't hear what
I said, so you're saying it's time for a field trip.
I really have to clean out some of that stuff. I don't know where I'm going to put it because I am bursting at the seams here. My office is tiny. I have storage in the attic. I am basically using every inch of my office. It looks clean from this awesome camera view, but if
Very
I
carefully
pan the camera
selected.
either direction, it does not look very clean right now. I have stuff in the basement, like it's insane. I have so much stuff, but yeah, like the stuff stashed at home. I have my vintage collection still at my parents' house. You know, my color computers, my TI, 99, my Commodore 64, my Amigas, my 2GS. It's still all set up, in my old room. So some backstory: I'm the youngest of 7 kids, so I'm like super spoiled. By the time by the time I was old enough to get into tech, my brothers and sisters were mostly out of the house, so I had the whole second floor to myself. So I had like just computers everywhere and just tons of stuff. If you go back to some of the early Hot Hardware articles, you'll see a green background in a lot of my pictures. That was the felt from the pool table in my playroom. So I put hardware down on the felt and I'd
Love
snap
it.
pictures on the green. It looked so horrible.
Awesome. So, what you're saying is we need to get two on one of these shows, and maybe James, if you have anything hiding in your collection, maybe get you on for a show.
Tuon would do it, but he's just so unlikable that I think we would turn off everybody that's watching. So I'm not sure how that would fly, but we'll see. So Nathan's asking, I should do a tech museum on the East Coast with HH branding. All kidding aside, if I ever hit the lottery, I'm doing two things, right? I am buying all of the Amiga patents and open sourcing everything Amiga because there's still litigation going on the Amiga side, and I love that stuff. And I would love to do a retro computer museum. That would just be anytime I'm looking at pictures from what's the one, the big one on the West Coast. I'm forgetting the name, but there's a bunch of awesome retro computer stuff on the West Coast, near Silicon Valley. Man, I would love to have some of that stuff going on up here because I truly enjoy it and I love seeing all that stuff in action. So yeah, so there's the Living Computer Museum in Seattle. That's right, the Computer History Museum. That's one's in California, right, James?
Yeah. And I feel like something like that's got to be some level of interactive so that people can actually use and experience the old tech and maybe give them a little more gratitude towards, what's in their pocket today and stuff when they're whining that they don't have the latest iPhone and this and that. Like, just to understand how far tech has come in the last 20, 30, 40 years is really insane.
It's nuts. So, Chris, how do I get you a link? Because we have Sanchez asking to show my Amigas.
Try Hangouts.
Do it through Skype.
Skype's fine.
Let's see if I can mess this up. So I just sent you a really old article. I'm not even sure the image pops are going to work, but that was from 2003, and I have a bunch of pictures so you could see the lovely felt.
It says you're typing. Did you hit enter?
What was that, Chris?
It says you're typing. Did you hit enter?
Oh, I hit enter. Yeah, did it not come through?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
There you go.
We'll get there eventually. This technology stuff is hard. All right.
So James saying he's been on an Atari ST retro thing recently. There is an ST in this collection. I forget which model. I never actually used an ST back in the day. I bought one because of all the history, in the battle with the Amiga. But I never got into the ST. I was such an Amiga fanboy that I never dug the Atari ST at all.
So is that your pool table there?
That green in the background is the felt from a pool table. The early days. Some more history. Chris, you're the only one watching that's going to appreciate this. Those photos, I believe, were taken on an Olympus 4040, and I'm still an Olympus fanboy today as well.
There you go. He is dedicated to the brand that is now. I don't think they're quite dead, but they're definitely in limbo.
Yeah, definitely in limbo for sure. I saw an announcement today that they're going to drop the low end but continue at the high end when chip takes over. But again, that's still just rumor. So if you scroll down here, I have a 1040 ST in this piece. I believe it was missing a key, but that is still boxed up and ready to roll. And just below that, my Amiga 500 is in this collection as well. That is still boxed up and pristine back in storage, I really have to do something with all this stuff, man.
So I think before we discussed shadow boxing them, if you can find shadow boxes deep enough, and then you can get them
Yeah, so
mounted.
there's
But
so much stuff I wanted to do. What I want to do now is get that stuff all. So there was two ways I was going to go. If I did a really small museum one day, that would all be shadow boxes, and I'd probably just emulate everything, on something like a Mister, because it's just so much easier to get files onto and off of them and all that kind of stuff. But now, like, there's so many retro projects in flight where you can get blank PCBs, updated PCBs for restoring these machines. I would love to frame all the motherboard PCBs and have the actual systems running. But this is all pie in the sky type stuff because it takes up so much space, requires so much power, such a pain in the stones to use the original hardware because it's all floppies or, some of the stuff is 5.25-inch floppies or cartridges. It's just crazy keeping that stuff running.
yeah, so I mean, what's the general condition of your stuff? Do you need to retrobrite some things, or because these pictures that you have, at least when this was published back in, when was this? 2003. I mean, they're looking good there, obviously. But how have they aged in the almost 20 years since?
This was before RetroBrite was a thing, right? I think RetroBrite gained popularity, or at least that branding or that name for using peroxide to get rid of the yellowing on hardware was named. But from that collection, everything was mint except for the Atari ST. The keyboard had a broken key, and the keyboard was kind of yellow, but everything else absolutely mint. So, and in that collection too, right now the Apple II GS WAS edition that's in that collection is still actually set up. I absolutely love the 2GS. I think the 2GS is one of the most beautiful retro computers ever. It's just so compact and tight and just awesome machine. That Mac, I believe it was a Mac LC next to it. That's still set up.
It looks like LC2.
In my old office. That's still, I mean, assuming they still work. I might go home and the reefer caps have exploded and they don't work right now, but I'm not sure. It's been so many years since I powered them up because I've been here. My parents live in another state.
Nothing a little soldering can't fix.
It should be boxed up and clean, and as long as nothing exploded inside, they should be good. I don't remember if I ever removed the Varda battery of death from my Amiga, so the Amiga might be toast. But yeah, as far as I know, all that stuff's still boxed up and ready to roll.
Uh-huh. So I think that's the end of my collection for today. Do you have anything else to share? I think that's the end of where you are.
I'm gonna stop for today because I want to see how this flies. If this ends up getting some views on YouTube, we can definitely do additional volumes. I have some weird stuff. I think one of the things Tuan might have sent me when he was at Zotac, not quite as old, but it was like an external display where you could overclock your graphics card with like this little USB box that had a monitor on it. I even forgot what it was called, but I saw that up in the stash. Zotac Nitro. I think yes, that's what it was. I still have that upstairs. I have some really funny, I'm not even going to say what it is. But some really funny, some of the first USB accessories that are hilarious to see. And I'll go to the old stash and get some really old stuff. Now, Dave also just did some remodeling and was getting rid of a bunch of old hardware. And I told him to hold on to some of the stuff he was about to get rid of. Dave's got lots of old stuff because, Dave started HH before I even came on. So he's got some really old stuff from, 21, 22 years ago that was reviewed in HH before even I came around. So yeah, we got lots of stuff. If this ends up being any popular at all, we can do lots of these. I have enough hardware in the stash. Like I never got rid of anything. I still have S3 graphics cards. I have, old DFI LAN party motherboards. I still have the Vapo Chills. I got tons of stuff. Dude, it's 2-on. I still have all my Jazz stuff. I have 1 gig and 2 gig external Jazz drives, SCSI Jazz drives. I have all that stuff still at home. I still have LS120 stuff at home. I have zip drives at my parents' home, not this home. I have all that stuff. I didn't get rid of anything. I have ATI TV tuner cards, that used coax still in the stash. So there's lots of stuff we could show.
Man, I think I used a 5.25-inch floppy like once or twice, 3.5-inch a few times, but I definitely have been spoiled. just pretty much jumping straight into CD-ROM and beyond, and relatively easy plug and play.
Yeah, I there's there's one spot at my parents' house where I have a poster still up because I punched through the wall because I couldn't get Rebel Assault running properly with QEMM back in the day. So yeah, it's not fun. Not fun configuring high memory and expanded memory back in the day, but got me here.
Do you miss ribbon cables?
I don't, man. I hate cables now. I used to spend so much time origami folding ribbon cables for cable management in systems that I just hate it now. Just those old cases, you inevitably would get your knuckles scraped, you'd get cut, everything would all get messed up, and then you can never move anything at all. So I love new machines, man. And if it was up to me, there would be like the motherboards would supply power to everything, and there'd be no power cables except one going right to the motherboard.
Like the new ATX standard with just 12 volt to the motherboard and breaking out the rails from there.
So Renovadio bringing up the 1541 and Commodore 64. I started on the PET in school before I got my C64. And once I got a C64, that was it. I've literally been in front of a computer every single day since I got a C64 back in the 80s. I want to say, I think I got my C64 in 85 or 86. I don't remember. Should I dig under my desk and pull out some of the rounded cables? I have all that stuff under the desk too, Tuan and James.
I mean, may as well.
No, I can't. We're almost up with it. We're almost into the hour, and I can't crawl. I'll come up covered.
Don't want to open that can of worms.
It's such a mess in here. Like I have this little, nice short field of view here where everything looks neat in my office, but no, I can't dig on.
So you're saying that the next cast we should have you do the wide angle?
No, I won't be able to clean up in time.
All right, well, want to wrap up?
Yeah, so I think that's it. I hope everybody that stuck around enjoyed this look at some of the cool retro hardware that I had in the stash and those cool notebooks that Chris had. If you haven't been by the site, if you know us just from YouTube, you definitely have to come by HotHardware.com. We have been online for over 20 years, posting numerous news articles and tons of reviews all that time, dating way back to, I think the first motherboard I tested was from Shuttle. I'm sure some of you haven't even heard of Shuttle at this point in time. But yeah, tons of news, tons of reviews. We're all over the web. Obviously, we're on YouTube, youtube.com/HotHardware. We are on Twitter, Facebook, you name it. We're all over the web. But the main site, HotHardware.com, is where all the action is. Please come by the site and check out everything that we post. The guys really work hard to provide some of that content. And obviously, if you like what you saw today, please like and subscribe. It's important to us. Hit that reminder bell so you know when we're going live or when we post up a new video. We are definitely trying to build the channel up. We're trying to step things up and make video a bigger thing on Hot Hardware. But for now, I think that's it. Chris, anything that you want to add before we sign off?
I think we're good, and as long as the audio is good today, I am happy. No, it's been a fun show.
That's cool, man. So yeah, I think everything went smooth. We had that little scare from Dave saying he couldn't hear us, but that was just because he was muted. So I think that we are good. So once again, thanks everybody. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed the show.